You're listening to the Murphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Murphology Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, ACA Murph, and I am here to give tips and information about group bicycling and bicycle touring with a focus on the Midwest and hopefully provide some entertainment for you as well. Well, with me today is John Subtirelu. Hey, John.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm so glad to have you on the show. You are the first person I've ever interviewed that has ridden your bike across the United States, and it's on my bucket list.
Well, it's a very fun adventure, and I recommend it to anyone.
And I'm guessing it was on your bucket list at some point.
Yeah, it's not there anymore, fortunately.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. How did you get into bicycling as an adult?
I think what really drew me to bicycling was bought a bicycle to get around my college campus, basically, and just was really thrilled with how convenient that was. Didn't have to worry about parking or any of that. And from that point on, just kept having a bike around for commuting and kind of extending my use for it, going out on, recreational rides and investing in better equipment, and just realizing that I really liked traveling by bike, be it for a day or 3 months.
Yeah, it really is a convenient way to get around and not worry about parking and those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
I guess I should start out by asking, where you live and what the biking culture is like there.
Sure. So I live in Columbus, Ohio right now. I have for about 5 years, originally from the northwest part of Ohio. But here in Columbus, it is a pretty good bike town. A lot of nice trails, good infrastructure in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say there's a really reliable network to commute by. So I think that a lot of the people that do commute by bike and get around town are probably more confident cyclists.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a lot of newbies out there. They tend to stick to the trails. So I think in one aspect, Columbus could really improve on building a more developed network for commuting, but we do have a really nice trail system.
Okay. And I'm in Iowa, and, we do not have mountains, but we do have a ton of like mountain bike trails that have been created. What's it like as far as off-road in Ohio?
There's some pretty decent trails in that sense. So Ohio is quite flat in the central part. So here in Columbus, we have a couple trails north and south for mountain bikers. I haven't spent too much time on them myself, but obviously they're pretty flat relative to anywhere else with real geographic features.
Yeah.
But people really do enjoy them.
And yeah, I probably should add that mountain biking is not in my top 10 list of fun ways to bicycle. I've tried it, but
yeah,
I
have a lot of respect for people that can do it.
Yeah.
But it makes me pretty nervous.
Yeah, exactly. I love being on the road and putting all my junk on my bike and making it weigh a lot and then biking. So I just have a different mindset than those mountain bikers. But so, of course, I want to talk about your bike ride across America. But before we do, have you been on other adventures that maybe you'd want to share?
Not a great deal. So mostly just kind of riding by myself around long rides, afternoon rides, that sort of thing. I did a couple overnight rides, one by myself for like a little camping trip. And then I also did, we have a ride here in Central Ohio called Tosser, the tour of the Scioto River Valley, which actually led into the development of the Adventure Cycling Association. A little history there.
Okay.
The people that started Tosser eventually became the founders of ACA.
Oh, cool.
So it's a pretty historic ride. It's been going on for 40 some years. So I did that as well one year and really enjoyed that. It's 100 miles from Columbus down to Portsmouth, Ohio on the Ohio River. Really pretty ride. And then you ride back the next day. So about 200 miles in a weekend.
Wow. And I'm assuming a supported ride since it's sponsored.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to carry your gear or anything.
Okay. So you went from that to somehow deciding to ride across the entire United States. So let's get into that.
Sure. Yeah. It was just, I heard about Transamerica Trail, saw pictures, just kept reading other people's blogs and thinking like, wow, how adventurous and how neat that it's something that's organized and
Yeah.
there people kind of understand what you're doing. So you're not totally on your own. There are these, communities that have these cyclists come through and they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are resources for cyclists. So I guess I was really drawn to kind of knowing that for a first time, it's a good starting route. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
given that it's quite long, it is a good starting route. You have all of the resources you need along the trail for the most part, and just the idea of seeing the entire country from one coast to the other by bike was just really, really endearing to me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I had it on my bucket list basically, and came to a point in my previous job that I kind of wanted to leave anyways. And just it was going to work out that I was going to leave in spring so I could start this. So it worked out this year.
Yeah, everything aligned, it sounded like. And then I'm thinking, this is what my vision is that you pull into these towns because, it's Transamerica route. So a lot of these towns expect cyclists. So are you kind of like a celebrity and people come running out of their businesses and like, hey, somebody's here?
I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, too bad.
No, yeah. I think that a lot of people are excited.
Yeah.
What's really great is that a lot of churches and community centers offer a place to stay
Oh,
for
cool.
cyclists.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, really nice resources. Some of them have showers and laundry. They typically ask for a small donation, but it's not expected. But it's a really great way to support the community, right? So, this church can further its resources by asking for donations.
Yeah.
And, of course, the cyclists, a place to stay is something really we really appreciate. So
Sure.
that is a great and a lot of times church members will come and speak with you for a little while and tell you about the town and the community. And that's really exciting to be able to actually talk to someone and get that social aspect out of it as well.
Oh, yeah. So where did you start? What town or what state?
So I started in Yorktown, Virginia, right on the coast.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. And then where did you end?
So I finished my tour completely in Seattle, Washington. The
Okay.
Transamerica Trail technically ends in Astoria, Oregon. So that sort of felt like a finish line as well in its own right, even though I
Mm-hmm.
had 200 more miles to Seattle.
And you just wanted some bonus miles or you weren't ready to be done? Or is that maybe where your ride back was?
Yeah, so I had a friend in Seattle that, said, oh, if you're going to be in the area, you should come stay for a few days. And I'd
Yeah.
never been to Seattle, so I thought that was a really good option. And I could get a flight out back to Ohio from Seattle pretty easily.
Oh,
So,
excellent. Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny that you say somebody asked you said, hey, if you're in the area, I did a tour down in Key West, like in Florida, and we were kind of near Miami, and a friend of mine was all like, oh, so you're going to be in the area, you should stop by. And it was like 100 miles to where he lived. And I'm like, that sounds great, but that would take us, 2 days to get there. And anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah.
Um, so if you include Seattle or not include, whatever you want to do, what was your total mileage?
I think including Seattle was about 4,600.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it took. I started May 11th and ended August 3rd or 4th. So
Wow.
just under 3 months.
Wow. I am sure you were having a hard time getting back to reality or the new reality of your life.
Yeah, it does. I was excited to finish. It had been quite a long summer, and as fun as it was, you kind of miss the conveniences and the comforts of regular life.
Sure.
So I was excited, but there is that sense of come down.
Sure, sure. Well, when you look at the actual miles that you put on, were you mostly on low traffic roads or trails, or give us a description of, what the terrain was like?
Sure. So obviously, most of it is on roads. Uh, the route is really focused on low traffic roads, so county roads.
Mm-hmm.
But there is quite a bit of it that can't be accommodated for that, especially as you get towards the center of the state or the center of the states and into the west. There just aren't as many roads to choose from.
Sure.
So you do end on a lot of state highways and even some national highways, which probably isn't for the inexperienced rider, but a good shoulder and, just paying attention to your surroundings can make it pretty comfortable.
Right. And then going through the mountains, was that quite an experience?
Absolutely. So yeah, I don't have much experience at all with mountains. So that was, I mean, it starts pretty much day one with the Appalachian Mountains. You
Oh,
get
yeah.
into the foothills pretty quickly. And I actually found that even though they're a lot shorter, the Appalachian Mountains are a lot more difficult to ride over on a bicycle than the Rocky Mountains. The engineering just isn't as elaborate. You don't have these well-constructed passes. You're pretty much just riding over whatever clear area they can find, and that can be quite steep. So it's just kind of relentless. Whereas in the Rockies, you spend a good portion of the day riding up a pass, and then you come down and you kind of get both the best of both worlds. But the Appalachians are just straight up and down, just relentlessly.
And you suffer the whole way up. And then I don't know about you, but I'm always terrified going too fast when you're fully self-contained and full. And so then I'm, like so nervous that I'm going to lose control of my bike on the way down.
Sure, and absolutely, and especially in the Appalachians, a lot of the roads are quite narrow. And the conditions towards the edges are really, broken asphalt, that sort of thing, gravel on the road. So you really do have to be careful. And you can't really descend too quickly.
Did you do this trip solo or were you with friends?
So I started solo. The great thing about the Transamerica Trail is that it is pretty heavily traveled. So in my 5th or 6th day, I met a couple people and ended up staying with one all the way to Seattle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and everybody that I met was great and really good friends. Him in particular, we're quite close now after spending all summer together.
Sure.
And it was just great the entire time. We kind of work our way into new groups and, kind of do the same sections for a while with people, which is really great and fun to have camp with people at night and share the experience, but also like you don't really feel obligated to help them along or any sense, like everyone's just kind of doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty liberating experience in that sense.
That's awesome. And what made you decide to go east to west? That just seems backwards.
Yeah, a lot of people. So I think the Transamerica Trail is supposed to go west to east, or it did in its founding, and that is kind of the standard way. For me, the East Coast is much closer. So getting a ride to the East Coast, was pretty simple. But also weather-wise, I think it works out a lot better to go east to west. There's people that say the prevailing winds are going to come west to east, so you're going to be fighting headwinds the whole time. And that, I think there may be some truth to that, but at a micro level, I don't know that you really experience winds any differently if you're to go one way or the other. But starting in the east, in May, the temperatures are quite mild, whereas if just starting in May in the west, it's actually quite cold as you get into the Rockies. So the majority of my ride was spent in the 70s and low 80s. And as we got into the west, we got those milder summer temperatures. But if you're to come into the east in late summer, you're going to get hot and humid. So I just think it works out better in that sense.
Yeah. So logistics is what, made you first decide it. But then overall, it sounds like it was a very smart move.
Yeah. Talking with people that were coming from the west, I was like, this is... I lucked out in having been almost forced to do it from the east.
Yeah. Well, the last episode I did for this podcast, I do touring tips at the end, and I talked about how to document your trip. And so, because for me, I have a hard time remembering, I'll be in the moment and I'm like, this is so awesome. And then like a month later, somebody will be like, so did you go through such and such town? And I'll be like, gosh, I have no idea. So hopefully you have either a good memory or a way of documenting your trip. But I wanted to know if you had any favorite towns that really spoke to you and you're like, that is a place I want to go back to.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny you mentioned the memory thing. I got to the point where towards the end, folks along the trail, community members would ask, where'd you start today? And it honestly got hard to remember.
Right.
I don't know. What state am I in? But favorite town, one that really surprised me and was just an absolute blast was Lander, Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
Small town, about 10,000 people, but very vibrant. A lot of people out and about, great downtown, just really nice town. And so we were there over July 4th, so took a rest day. And the town just goes all out for July 4th. They
Nice.
have a massive parade, which the Adventure Cycling Association guided tour was in Lander at the same time, so they got invited to be in the parade, and then
Oh,
they invited all the other cyclists that happened to be in town as well. So we were part of the parade, and that was really fun. I threw Cliff Bars instead of candy, which was an expensive joke, but worth it. Um, and so the town after the parade, they lift all of their fireworks ordinances, and they also lift open container.
oh
Um,
gosh.
Not a great mix, but I guess for a day, it's quite fun. So the town was just lit up, quite literally, with fireworks on every corner. It's just a big party. So a really fun place to end up on
Wow.
July 4th.
What was the name of the city again?
Lander, Wyoming.
Lander, Wyoming. So everyone will have to look that up on the internet after they're done listening.
Yeah.
While you're on your trip, obviously you're on the road months and months and months. I'm assuming a few things may have gone wrong. Anything, memories that jump out?
Yeah, so my biggest mechanical issue was probably a broken chain in Missouri, actually going through the Ozarks.
Mm.
And I happened to be alone for those few days. I was kind of riding ahead of my friend to meet my parents. They were going to meet me for a day on the trail. And yeah, just I don't know what it was, what was wrong with the chain or what, but it snapped while I was going up a hill.
Mm.
And funny enough, my riding partner is a professional mechanic.
Oh,
So he was a day behind me, wasn't able to help. And I am not particularly proficient in working on my own issues mechanically. So I kind of knew how a chain works, and I had replaced a pin once, just as practice. And I didn't have internet connection or phone service because I was in the middle of kind of the Ozarks National Park area.
okay.
So I just sat out there for 2 hours trying to get it connected again. The first time I did, I forgot to adjust the tension on the pin, and it snapped again on the next
Oh,
hill.
man.
So yeah, I was honestly thought it must be a lost cause, but I didn't really have any other options. So I tried again, and I lost 3 links. So my shifting was quite restricted,
Sure.
but it held, and I was able to get a new chain when I got to Springfield.
Oh, awesome. I was actually, you said you were in the Ozarks, so I was envisioning that the chain fell off, but you were at a beach and a bar and you were like, whoop, I guess I'll stay here. But no such luck.
No.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned that you didn't have internet service, but I'm guessing that you probably had, physical maps, but did you ever get lost?
Uh, Not really.
Oh,
So I never really had much issue with that. The maps that the ACA publishes for the Transamerica Trail they're absolutely wonderful.
mm-hmm.
Really easy to follow. Have everything on them that you need. You can plan your day out by where the next service is, that sort of thing. And the route is actually marked in a number of states.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so signage pretty much through Virginia and Kentucky, and I think even a little in Missouri. So, and those are honestly the most difficult states. There's probably the most turning and road changes in those states. So, it is really nice to not have to worry about that.
That's awesome. Well, how about some basics on your bike setup? People are always interested to know, what what brand of bike you have and maybe some of the basics of your setup.
Sure. So I rode an All-City Space Force,
Nice.
kind of a newer model of that. It was like the 2018. Really nice bike. Not typically thought of as kind of a long distance tour, but certainly can handle it. And I had unconventionally, I used a double chain ring instead of 3. But I think that's becoming more standard
Mm-hmm.
as technology improves. And there was plenty of range. I had a 10-speed cassette in the back, so I had quite a bit of range and
Mm-hmm.
never really felt restricted by it.
Mm-hmm. And how about gear setup? I'm assuming you had 4 bags plus maybe a handlebar bag, or?
Yep, exactly. 4 Ortlieb bags and a handlebar bag as well. I spent almost the entire trip wishing I could figure out how to get rid of my front two.
Mm.
I kept seeing other cyclists that only had rear panniers, and I was just so frustrated that I just couldn't figure out how they do it. But I don't know. They're just carrying less or what.
I was going to say, I still can't figure that out. And if I go on like a 7-day tour, there's just no way. I mean, if you take out camping gear and maybe you sleep in a hammock on a tree, under a tree every day, but even if you only have a couple outfits to wear,
Yeah.
yeah. You needed to stop those people and say, "Can I see what's in your bags?"
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And are you pretty organized? Like, did you always return things to the same bag so you weren't digging through all four of them every time you needed something?
I tried to, especially at first. I experimented with weight balance a lot, so that kind of changed
Mm-hmm.
where I would put certain items. Yeah, my original setup, I was way too front loaded
Mm.
with weight distribution, so the bike was clearly not enjoying that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Towards the end, I just sort of gave up on it altogether and was just throwing things in as I needed. Yeah, you just kind of lose sight of your organization methods.
Right. I always ask this question to people I interview, but did you have any luxury items that you carried that you probably didn't really need, but you really like to have?
Yeah. So I think the most notable thing is I kept finding books, typically free, like the free libraries, the little posts with a little box on them.
Yeah.
Take one, leave one kind of book situation. Typically, I don't find many books I'm interested in those, but I kept finding them along the way. So I had like a stack of like 3 or 4 books that I wasn't even planning on reading that I was just carrying with me because I found them and was like excited about it. So like doing shopping along the way, I guess.
Yeah. And think of the space that those books take up.
Yeah, it was probably a silly move.
Do you still have them or did you get rid of them?
Yep, I absolutely still have them.
Oh, awesome. Good souvenirs. Well, did you meet a lot of people during your trip?
Yeah, absolutely. The Transamerica Trail not only has people riding it quite frequently, but it intersects with a lot of other popular cycling routes and such.
Oh, okay.
So the Continental Divide, you're frequently in and out from Colorado to Montana, passing them. So that was really fun seeing cyclists that are set up for more of an off-road trip and getting to share stories about how they do what they do and how it's different.
Yeah.
Is really fun. We spent about a week traveling with a group of about 4 Australians, and they were just an absolute blast, and some of the warmest people I've ever met. That was just so fun to be able to have that cultural exchange and really enjoy their company.
Yeah, and just to be able to meet people in that circumstance, they're enjoying the same thing that you're enjoying, and it probably doesn't matter, what you all do for a living or where you're from. It's just like the experience itself.
Yeah, and you all have that kind of common ground to start from. You're all out riding your bikes, so
Yeah,
it makes getting to know each other a lot easier.
yeah. You mentioned earlier that, a lot of churches allow you to camp and you found, showers and maybe laundry here and there. But overall, what was your experience with camping or hostels or even, I don't know if you use the app, Warm Showers?
Yeah, pretty much did all of those things. Camping was always fun. I like to camp, and especially in the West, camping is a really great option. It's just so gorgeous out. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be outside as much as possible. One particular instance where it was a little frustrating in the Grand Teton National Forest, just before you get into the national park, we stayed at a national forest campground, and so it was my friend and I. We pulled up on 2 bicycles and we're going to stay the nights, and there was a space available. So the camp host
Mm-hmm.
told us to go find a spot and then put our money in the box. So we did that, and as we're filling out our little card just to kind of say what we had and pay the appropriate price, we marked the vehicles down as 0 and paid the standard fee of $12.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the camp host came around later and pointed at our bikes and said 1, 2, and demanded that we pay the additional vehicle charge of $6 for having two bicycles. We were just stunned that was the policy.
Wow.
Came to find out it was absolutely not the policy, and my friend was mailed a check for $6 from the campground organization.
Seriously?
We sent an email just to follow up because it seemed outrageous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, two bicycles don't take up any room. So yeah, they told us they would contact the host and let him know. But that was a frustrating experience because he was so sure of himself, but luckily that is not the policy.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't kick you out or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because that's the worst when you're all set up and then somehow you are asked to leave.
Yeah. It's not safe for cyclists either to have to keep, looking for a place to stay as it gets dark. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And I always think of, camping or hostels, like that's an expense every day. And if you're paying, like you said, $12 or with your bike, $18 a day, that adds up. So can you just give a brief description of what Warm Showers actually is?
Yeah, so Warm Showers is a network of primarily other touring cyclists. So everyone is either looking for or offering a place to stay for free. So the people that are offering are typically other touring cyclists that just enjoy the experience of meeting new people, or just anyone, I guess, that enjoys the experience of meeting new people.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to stay in their home. A lot of times they'll offer a meal, or a lot of people like to cook for their hosts. It's just a really nice way to meet someone at your destination and enjoy some time with them in a pretty relaxing environment. It's really nice to stay in a nice home and have a shower and all of that.
Yeah.
The most interesting Warm Showers experience I had is in Missoula, Montana. There's a pretty infamous Warm Showers host named Bruce that kind of runs an open door policy for his house. So anyone can just stay. They don't really necessarily need to ask ahead of time. He has lots of space in this large home in Missoula. So people are just coming in and out. It's really fun. He has a really great culture there. It feels like a hostel, but it's so organic and convenient. People are just really warm and fun.
Shout out to Bruce. That sounds cool.
Bruce is awesome.
And Warm Showers is actually a website, or I don't know if they have an app. Do they have an app?
I think they do. Yeah.
But you can basically just plug in wherever you are or wherever you're going and find out what's available. So it's a really neat resource for cyclists.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you're nearing the end of your trip, and tell us what it was like to see the ocean.
So we got to the coastline about 100 miles before we made it to Astoria.
Oh, okay.
So I have never been further west than Denver before this trip. So I've never seen the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty fantastic experience to kind of ride right to the Pacific Ocean from the other ocean for the first time. Seeing it, it was really just kind of overwhelming, and it was nice. I was camping at a Airbnb, and a couple other cyclists that I happened to be around in that at that time were there already. So I rode up, and they came out to greet me, and I was almost in tears. It's like, oh wow, this is overwhelming.
Yeah. I do a bike ride every year in Iowa called Ragbri, and it starts on the west side of the state, which is the Missouri River, and ends on the east side of the state, which is the Mississippi River. And I get all emotional just getting to that. It's 400 some miles. It's certainly no ocean, so I can't imagine your emotions starting all the way on the East Coast and finishing on the West Coast, or not finishing, but seeing the end of the United States. It's great.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, great to think about. So then you get up to Astoria, which I'm assuming and maybe takes you a couple more days or one day. What was the finish like? I'm sure there's nobody there with balloons and, cheering you on, but what was it like?
It was, so Astoria is a nice little town, and there's a boardwalk that runs along the coast. So that is kind of part of the finish. You ride around the southern point of the town and then come up along this boardwalk, and there's trolley tracks. So our last mile, we're trying to find kind of where the finish line is and what is that like. and also trying to navigate around these trolley tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I swear I wrote like 800 meters left in the Transamerica Trail. I navigated wrong over a trolley track and wiped out in front of a lot of tourists. Everything went down. Some of my bags popped open and things fell out. And I was like, I can't believe this. I had gotten blown off the road earlier, and that was my only other wipeout, just kind of falling over in some gravel. But now it's a wipeout with so little left of the Transamerica Trail was pretty funny. But I picked up and we kept going, and the finish line was essentially just kind of like a museum, and it felt sort of underwhelming.
Yeah.
And we knew that a lot of people also consider the Astoria Column a nice place to finish. It's got really great views. So we decided we'd do that as well, right up to the Astoria Column, which is kind of in the center of this little peninsula. And it was only like a mile away or a mile and a half,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like 600 feet of climbing.
Are you kidding?
It was insane. It was the hardest climb we had done the entire time. I pushed a lot, and I hadn't pushed at all yet.
Oh my gosh.
So it was and we're just drenched in sweat. I think the exertion of that made it a pretty good finish. I was like, all right, we got here. We deserved this. And the views were amazing. Looking over the Columbia River and out into the Pacific with the boats in the river. It was just really, really pretty.
Awesome. Well, you definitely know how to do an ending. First you throw your stuff everywhere, you fall, and then you climb 600 like that.
You got to make it memorable.
Yes, you certainly did. Well, I briefly touched on this earlier, but have you adjusted to life without being on the bike daily like you have been?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty much as soon as I got home, I was into find a job mode. So spent a lot of time doing that.
Yeah.
A focus for me was just making sure I stay active. A lot of people kind of warned me that it's pretty easy to actually put on more weight than you had before. Just if you don't kind of keep up with some sort of daily activity, especially as you have to bring your appetite down from the tour. You typically eat a lot, so you have to shrink your stomach a little, I guess. So you got to keep working in that sense. So I stayed busy looking for a job and trying to do some daily exercise.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, once you are back in the job world, do you have any biking adventures on the horizon?
Nothing set in stone. And it's hard to imagine the next time I'll get a good chunk of time like this, but I would love to do the Continental Divide. Speaking with people that were doing it along the way and meeting people who had done it. It just sounds awesome. And I would love to do something a little more off-road and a little more kind of remote. It sounds really, really fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, would you recommend to people who have the dream to do what you did, should they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Transamerica Trail is a really wonderful place to start if you're looking to do something big. And it's such a life-changing experience. I feel more confident in myself, and I've met so many great people. Kind of know that as long as I keep working at something, I can probably accomplish it. And that's really only a lesson you can learn if you do something big. So
yeah, and I
definitely recommend it.
This is definitely big. I mean, like you mentioned, you saw other cyclists doing the same thing, but I bet in general, there are not very many people that can say they've done Transamerica. So congrats to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, totally enjoyed talking to you today, John. If anybody wants to learn about your trip, have you documented it anywhere for the public?
Yeah, absolutely. I kept a weekly blog. The website is my last name, Subtirelu, subtirelu.com/Transamerica. I've got about 12 posts there documenting kind of the adventure and the little stories that came up along the way.
Awesome. And there's some fun pics on there too, because I checked it out.
Yeah. Lots to take pictures of. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John, for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
You bet.
Wonderful.
How about a touring tip? Let's talk sleeping and eating on a budget. If you plan to do more than a couple tours next year, a need for a budget may pop into your mind. Of course, there are people who can cycle by credit card, staying at hotels every night, and eating every meal in restaurants. If that is not you, here are a few tips to keep you on your bike enjoying those next adventures. First tip is to travel with somebody so you can split the cost of campsites and or hotels if you go that route. A lot of campsites charge by the tent, so if you get to really know that somebody you're with, you may want to even share a tent. That will save you a few bucks. And actually, if you do a little research, you may be able to find places to camp that don't charge a fee at all. Some city parks will allow camping, and a lot of churches will let you camp in the yard and may even open up to use their restroom. Be sure to ask before setting up your tent. Also, be aware of sprinkler heads that may be near your proposed spot. There is nothing fun about waking to a full-blast sprinkler system in action. A website you may want to check out is freecampsites.net. Now, another way to score a free camping spot is to put on a friendly smile and talk to people. This is a fun story. One year I was on tour with about a dozen people and we found a fun little bar in rural Iowa. Somebody in our group connected well with the bar owner, and before we knew it, we were invited to use their yard, and the owner was also a volunteer firefighter with access to the fire station for bathrooms and showers. We were so pumped. But it gets even better. It was terribly hot that day and that evening, so we lingered in the bar late enough that the owner decided we should camp in the bar and enjoy the air conditioning. I was never so happy to sleep on a bar floor. And the owners even made us breakfast in the morning. It was an awesome experience, and we have been back several times to visit them. So you may not want to actually sleep in a bar, but in general, people love to know more about your bicycle adventure, and many offer up something, whether it's their yard, their couch, their basement, or they know a great place in town to go. Social media may be a great resource to find a free couch to sleep on, sending out a post such as, "Do I know anybody in such and such town that will be around on such and such night?" Who knows if one of your old high school friends is there and ready to welcome you, or if a friend of a friend of a friend has an empty apartment that you could use. It sure doesn't hurt to ask. Another website to check out is warmshowers.org. It's basically a community of bicycle tourists. You can go onto the website to find people who open their home to cyclists passing through. And it's free. Most Warm Showers hosts are also cyclists, so be ready to socialize. One feature available with Warm Showers is free meals, which is a super nice bonus. So speaking of meals, food is a necessity that can blow through your budget quickly if you're not careful. Space is probably limited on your bike, so you may end up having to buy a lot of your meals. Buying a loaf of bread, package of meat, and a package of cheese, and splitting it with your touring buddies is way cheaper than most restaurants. And it's fun to sit on the curb right outside the grocery store, digging into a loaf of bread and your meat and cheese. Buying a box of granola bars at the same grocery store is much less expensive than visiting a gas station every morning to buy one granola bar. Grocery stores will always be less expensive than restaurants and offer a huge variety. You could also check out bakeries to see if they sell day-old products for less than fresh. Some restaurants that you go to will let you order off the kids' menu, which, of course, is a smaller portion, but definitely less expensive than anything else on the menu. Also with restaurants, most of those places offer way more food than you need or that you should eat, and most of the time you're not going to be able to take a to-go box, so ask if they can do a half order at a lower price. Doing a little research of the area can help with your budget as well. Bars or restaurants may have incredible specials like a wing night or cheap taco night. Check those bars or restaurants out on Facebook, or just give them a call once you know where you'll be stopping. A little prep work may save you some major cash. Then when the time is right, you can splurge. That's this week's tip. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Check out Murphologypodcast.com to find all kinds of great info, and email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for tuning in to listen to the Murphology Podcast. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from Martha Beck. "To change yourself is an act of courage and wisdom. To change anyone else is impossible. Think about it.